Okay. So hi guys, I'm back after a week. Sorry about that. Yeah, I wasn't feeling well on Monday. I mean on Tuesday. Sorry, yesterday. Then on Monday I had my cricket coaching. So yeah, finally restarted though, which is nice. But yeah, I can record video. And on Sunday, literally the traffic on Saturday in normal 1.5 hour road trip took 3 hours. That's how bad the traffic was. So anyways, let's forget about all of that. And this series will be ongoing until Kings and Generals episode. I believe it's episode 7 about the 100 Years War. Literally, like 2 days ago, they released episode 6. So yeah, so we'll be doing this one, episode 5, and then episode 6. And then once they release episode 7, that'll come. And yeah, but we'll be doing other reactions while episode 7 is coming. So yeah, so I just want to mention on Saturday, me and my friend Prashant are going to be doing a stream on Roblox. I mean, not stream, sorry, because my streaming obviously doesn't work that much. So not stream, we're just going to record something on Roblox. So yeah. Okay, that's enough of me talking now. Let's get the video.
With the passing of England's golden generation of warrior Plantagenets, such as Edward III, the Black Prince and John of Gaunt, it seemed as though Albion's wartime fortunes had finally run out. Hard-won possessions in Aquitaine had been almost completely lost in just over a decade. France and
the hard-won positions that have been lost under the kings of Henry IV. Well, you might get confused with Henry V, but Henry V was the entire opposite to his father. And Richard II was the guy who was one of the worst kings of England, I'd say. Yeah. So most of the land was taken away and was literally returned to the starting position of Gascony, Calais, and small parts of Normandy. And then literally, Henry V conquers France. I mean, literally, France is like taken away to like the modern Vichy area. So, yeah.
And its allies had control of the sea, and the island kingdom was undergoing political turbulence which left it unable to conduct the war. However, King Henry IV would reinvigorate his realm, change its
Wrong. Henry V, not Henry IV.
Character forever, and fight one of the most famous battles in European history. Welcome to our video on the Battle of Agincourt.
Henry V,
With upcoming Father's Day, you're probably looking for the perfect gift for the venerable head. The reign of Lancastrian usurper King Henry IV did not begin well, and almost immediately rebellions sprang up to resist his rule, first by Owain Glyndŵr in Wales, and then 3 years later by a disaffected member of the Percy family.
one of my favorite YouTubers flung through history once mentioned in his video that he is related to Henry Percy Hotspur, and that's where the team Tottenham Hotspur, which is my favorite team in the Premier League. That's where the namesake of it is given, and Henry VI fought them off brilliantly and got rid, basically.
Known as Hotspur. As he was the closest to the rebels, the king's 16-year-old son, Henry of Monmouth, skillfully blocked Welsh and Percy forces from uniting with one another, and then played a decisive role in the royalist victory at Shrewsbury in 1403, charging his victorious division into Hotspur's flank and winning the battle. It was just a taste of the military prowess the young prince would display in the future. Despite the victory, further revolts broke out during the first decade of the 15th century, and Wales remained recalcitrant. Henry IV also began to suffer from numerous illnesses during the later part of his reign, which left him more and more incapable of ruling his realm. From around 1407 onwards, governance of England would increasingly fall to the heir, Henry of Monmouth, who even...
His name was actually... There are three ways you can call him. Actually, there are four. Henry V, Henry of Monmouth, Henry Lancaster. And it's also... I explained my last episode about the Lancaster thing. It's gone through a male line. How is it like? Yeah. And because he inherited the duchy. But yeah, you can also call him Henry of Plantagenet to the house also. Like Lancaster, so yeah.
At this early stage was noted as a diligent administrator and capable leader. As the new royal House of Lancaster was solidifying its hold over England, their Valois rivals in France were busy destroying any unity the French...
Yeah, they were destroying it because Charles VI the Mad, when he was 25, had a mental incident. I don't know really what it was. I'm sure they'll get into it. But yeah, which made him think he was made of glass. So yeah, he basically destroyed his kingdom. And Charles VII had a lot to do before getting it back towards glory under Charles V.
French kingdom might have had.
Yep.
2.5 decades earlier, 25-year-old Charles VI suffered a psychotic episode whilst riding through a forest.
Illness may be passed on for several generations through his mother, Juana Bourbon. Although still called by subjects Charles the Beloved. Also, you can know, Charles the Mad.
Forest, and from that point quickly descended into total madness, famously believing himself to be made of glass.
Yeah, that one.
This deficiency on the throne created a power vacuum which would bring disaster to France. Louis I, Duke of Orleans, took the reins of government following his elder brother's fall to madness, continuing the war with England, whilst also increasing his own wealth and power on the side. As the
and the series of famous people who get hacked to death, Louis I of Orleans, and the person who hacked him to death is Jean the Fearless of Burgundy. So yeah.
The second son of Charles V, Orleans had the status of a Valois Prince du Sang, or Prince of the Blood, and was therefore among the highest nobility in France. The main victim of this state of affairs was the House of Valois-Burgundy, Dukes of Burgundy since the Capetian cadet house's extinction. John II granted the vacant duchy as an appanage to his youngest son, Philip the Bold, in 1363.
John II, he means King John II of France, not John II of Burgundy, but John Fearless of Burgundy, but yeah.
And that son had subsequently been the dominant force in Charles VI's minority. Upon Philip's death in 1404, the powerful Duchy of Burgundy, which now included wealthy Flanders and Artois in the north, passed to John the Fearless. Jonathan Sumption describes him as a short, bull-headed man of unprepossessing appearance, graceless, awkward and taciturn. But aside from his less-than-perfect personality, he was a man of supreme talent. John's military experience was extensive, culminating in his leading of the French contingent in the Battle of Nicopolis, while his excellent administrative skills often led his father to rely on John as a capable deputy during times of need. A bitter struggle for power and control over the kingdom began between John the Fearless and the Duke of Orleans, which quickly turned violent. The two men clashed on almost every single important policy issue. While John supported the Pope in Rome and opposed continued war with England due to the danger it caused.
The schism or the papal schism was split within the Catholic Church while Louis supported the one Avignon.
To trade in Flanders, Orleans deferred to the Avignon papacy and wanted to continue the conflict. Factions began to develop around both parties. Orleanists, later called Armagnacs, followed Louis, and Burgundians rallied to John, with street brawls even occurring between both groups of supporters in the capital city streets. This simmering tension finally boiled over when on November 23rd, 1407, the Duke of Orleans was dragged from his mule and brutally bludgeoned.
The order came from Duke of Burgundy, who shortly admitted the deed and declared it to be an justifiable act of genocide from just ruler common good.
To death on a Paris street by assassins sent by John.
When's the last time you seriously thought about your browser? Does it look like this? With
John. Louis's young son Charles inherited the dukedom, and, advised by the late Louis's father-in-law, the Count of Armagnac, swore an oath of vengeance against the Duke of Burgundy. This started a vicious civil war between the Armagnac and Burgundian factions, which was to last for decades. After securing power in Paris by means of a coup d'etat, John the Fearless was besieged in the city by the Armagnacs in 1411, led by the...
Before he was besieged, most of the west was Burgundian, most of the east was Burgundian, most of the west was Armagnac.
Duke of Berry, another prince of the blood.
Yep.
Seeking assistance, the Duke of Burgundy sent envoys to Henry IV in England, promising territory in Flanders and other concessions in return for aid. A few weeks later, 3,000 English troops under the Earl of Arundel ventured to France and managed to break the siege before returning home.
Yeah, please.
The harsh rule of John the Fearless angered Paris's civilians, and in 1413, the Duke was forced out of the city, isolating himself in his own vast domains, while the Armagnacs secured most of the country. Unfortunately for them, time had run out. In England, Henry IV passed away of chronic illness in March of 1413, and was succeeded by his son, who was coronated as Henry V on April 9th, as a snowstorm raged outside of Westminster Abbey. The new ruler consciously transformed his behaviour upon coming to the throne. From an unruly and riotous Prince of Wales, fond of wine, women and quarrelling with his father, now King Henry V immediately began conducting himself with gravitas and level-headedness, taking his responsibilities as a monarch seriously. He gathered worthy, incorruptible advisors around himself, kept household costs low, engaged personally in ensuring justice in his realm, and subdued lawlessness wherever and whenever he could. Yet he also delved into Christianity and became a religious zealot capable of extraordinary brutality when he thought it necessary. When Henry's heretical old friend John Oldcastle plotted to kidnap him, the king had him and all of his followers burned alive. Above all, however, was Henry V's desire to regain the rights and territories of the English royal family in France. It was clear that the new king would not maintain the truce for long.
Yep.
In late 1414, a grand embassy was sent to Paris to discuss proposals for peace, but Henry's demands were extremely high. The 1360 Treaty of Bretigny was to be fully re-implemented, and England's stolen territories in Aquitaine, Poitou and Ponthieu were to be returned. More than that, any outstanding...
I put this as one of the harshest proposals given, along with the Treaty of Versailles and whatever happened to Napoleon. So yeah.
Funds from Jean II's ransom agreement would be paid, along with an additional £330,000, the annexation of Normandy, Maine and Anjou, as well as overlordship of Brittany, Flanders, Beaufort and Nogent. Perhaps Henry V was simply attempting to regain lost English lands in France, but such untenable terms might have been intended to be rejected. Whatever the case, the French did indeed reject them, and that made the resumption of war inevitable. With his rejection, the Dauphin of France, Louis of Guyenne, sent the English king an insulting gift, arrogantly stating to the ambassadors that he would send to King Henry, because he was young, little balls to play with and soft pillows to sleep on to help him grow to manly strength. In response, Henry...
Guyenne, both of them were around the same age. Henry was about 5-6 years younger. So still, but he turned out to be a much better military.
Henry stated to his advisors that, if perchance they thought to lie abed with soft pillows, then I, perchance before they wish, shall arouse them from their slumbers by hammering on their doors at dawn.
Yeah, that's how English was spoken at the time, like this. It's hard to understand. It's hard to understand the modern English, but yeah.
With that, orders were sent out to raise the largest English army since Crécy. 320 captains were contacted to muster troops in various regions around the kingdom under an indenture, a legal contract between a soldier and the man he served under. It specified the conditions and length of service, disciplinary practices, pay grades, and other matters, and was a sign that mobilizing troops in England was becoming more professionalized. Other feudal lords raised retinues from their own fiefs, and Henry himself even drew warriors from his royal lands in Cheshire, Lancashire, and South Wales. Overall, the army which gathered in Southampton was around 12,000 strong, with a large archer contingent.
Yeah, archers number around at least.
After dealing with a plot to depose him and executing its ringleaders, Henry V and his invasion force embarked from England.
Yeah, the reason you're not seeing me talk so much is because from the time of Henry V's coronation to the Battle of Agincourt, I don't really know much, but once you go to the Battle of Agincourt, I'll be literally pausing every 5 seconds, so yeah.
On August 11th, 1415, in around 700 ships.
700?
The king himself.
You might think it's a huge number, but yeah, it's actually a pretty huge number. Because the ships at the time were pretty small, compact. But now we have 12,000, about 700 ships. Each ship had to have around 8. I'm not sure about the exact number because I don't go too technical into this video. But around 100 to 200. Around there. 100 to 200, maybe 300 sometimes. But yeah. Some ships even had as low as 30. So yeah. Most of them were just for cargo.
Himself and his closest advisors sailed aboard a 500-ton flagship known as Le Trinite. The armada reached the Normandy coast 3 days later and disembarked near Chef-du-Caux at the mouth of the Seine River. Rather than launching a devastating chevauchée through the area as his royal predecessors had, Henry marched to the strategic port of Harfleur and, when his surrender demand was rejected, put the city to siege.
Yeah, but that was too long.
However, unexpectedly dogged resistance by the small garrison led to a siege of 6 weeks, during which the English army was ravaged by outbreaks of malaria and dysentery, which eventually killed or debilitated almost a third of.
Later, just after Henry had conquered France, 2 months before Charles VI the Mad died, he died of dysentery. So that was a big thing, playing armies even during World War I, which was a century ago. So yes.
Of its troops. Henry finally took the city on the 22nd of September and then conferred with his advisors as to what their next move was going to be. At the time he was doing so, a large French army of about 20,000 men was slowly gathering in Rouen under the Dauphin, ready to intercept the English. Henry V wasn't the only thing Charles had to worry about. John the Fearless declared himself eager to join the fight against England, but his presence was judged to be detrimental, as it would only cause divisions in the army. So the Dauphin asked the Duke of Burgundy to send 800 troops instead of coming himself. But this insulted the Duke, and he instead refused to send any assistance. Throughout the entire campaign, the nominally Armagnac French leaders would have to keep one eye on Burgundy. It had long been rumoured that he was collaborating with the English.
He didn't actually want to collaborate with the English because he knew that if he did and the English lost, he would be dead. By dead means his duchy would be, taken. So yeah. So his son, after he was bludgeoned to death, decided to collaborate with the English.
Nevertheless, the delay at Harfleur put King Henry into a predicament. It was late in the campaigning season now, but he could not just sail back to England without achieving anything more.
Yeah, that's true.
Nor could he risk marching towards Bordeaux as he had intended, or Paris itself. The army was too depleted, and an attack on the capital might
basically the entirety of France. Why would you want to do that?
Forcibly reunite the French factions. Instead, it was decided that the army would head immediately for
Agincourt, his grandfather did that, so yeah.
Calais, so that Henry might tread the same steps through his lands in Normandy and Ponthieu that his great-grandfather Edward III had. After garrisoning the newly captured Harfleur, the English army set out on its march, intending to remain on the coast all the way to Calais. The trek started well enough, and rivers near Dieppe and Eu were easily forded, but this all changed on the 13th. As Henry's army approached the old Roman ford over the Somme at Blanchet.
Guess what's gonna happen in about 700 years? Yep, actually not 700, about 520 years. Everyone knows what's gonna happen there, the Battle of the Somme, and I believe World War One. So yeah, in about 500 years.
Attack, where the king planned to cross. A captured Gascon prisoner informed him that an advance guard of 6,000 French under Constable Charles d'Albret was waiting and ready to block any attempt to cross. Realizing that he would have to cross,
and he had to go, he went almost all the way across the river. I mean, basically almost the entirety of the Somme, which is one of the longest rivers in France.
Cross further inland, Henry pivoted right and marched upstream, shadowed all the way by d'Albret on the other side of the bank. After managing to shake his pursuers off, however, the English managed to cross at Nesle, but it was already too late. In the meantime, the main French army under Bourbon cut across the Somme at Amiens and proceeded to unite with d'Albret near Péronne. The tired English, racked by hunger, disease, and now almost entirely depleted of supplies, continued marching north, and on October 23rd reached Blangy. It was there, as Henry's army crossed a tributary of the great river, that it witnessed a terrifying sight. Drawn up on a slightly elevated ridge about a mile in front of them was the entire French army, rank after rank of magnificent mounted knights and men-at-arms, a sight which led the English king to draw up in battle formation as well. After a tense hour-long standoff, the French pulled back even further and took up position.
Yeah, but if the French had attacked while the English army was going to formation, they could have annihilated them and avoided the Battle of Agincourt, maybe killing or capturing King Henry, so yeah.
For the night in a blocking position on the road to Calais, near a small hamlet known as Agincourt. On the night of October 24th, Henry ordered complete silence in the English camp, while the French could be heard rejoicing and celebrating across the rain-filled night air. The battlefield, which both sides lined up on the following morning, was an area of sodden, recently ploughed field, in an area between the village of Agincourt in the west, Tramcourt in the east, and Maisoncelles in the south, bounded by forested terrain on the flanks of each army. Henry V's depleted army was now about 8,500 strong, and severely lopsided in composition, with 7,000 archers and only one.
Archers make up at least 60% of the army, 60 to 70%, but here they made up to 80%, which is crazy.
1,500 dismounted knights and men-at-arms. Due to its limited numbers, it was arrayed in a single line of battle. In the center were 3 small divisions of melee infantry, known as battles, with units of longbowmen between them. The left battle was under the command of the
Edward, Duke of York, is father of Richard, Duke of York, who rises up against the English monarchy, starts wars with the Roses. His son Richard becomes Richard III, he gets killed by Henry VII, and yeah.
veteran Baron of Camoy. The right was led by Edward, Duke of York, while Henry V took control of the central division. Even more archers were equally placed on both the left and right flanks, with a significant portion in the woods on each side of the field. The archers were under the authority of Sir Thomas Erpingham. All of the army was protected by a defensive wall of stakes and caltrops, designed to blunt cavalry charges. On the other side of the field, a grand French royal army of around 20,000 was under the nominal but insecure dual command of Constable Charles d'Albret and Marshal Boucicaut, professional men whose relatively low birth
their low birth made them overshadowed by John I, Duke of Bourbon, Charles Duke of Orleans, who was the son of Louis got touched it, and Jean I, Duke of Alençon.
Meant that they were outranked by high nobles, such as the Dukes of Orleans, Alençon and Bourbon. Their army was deployed in 3 lines of battle, the first and second comprising most of France's proud dismounted knights and men-at-arms for use as a sledgehammer against the English, while a line of mainly archers and crossbowmen were kept in the rear. It was the duty of the nobility to win the battle, not mere bow-wielding peasants. On both flanks, a heavily armoured cavalry force of around 750 knights each was in the process of forming up, while more units were slowly trickling into the French army as time went by.
Which made the situation
Having learned the harsh lesson from their defeats at Crécy and Poitiers, the French did not charge right away, and instead remained where they were. It was clear to d'Albret and Boucicaut that while their enemy's army would only wither away with time, their own would get even stronger. Whatever its merits, the impetuous knights and nobles of France chafed at this cowardly strategy of delay. Seeing that the French weren't going to attack him, Henry V knew he had to make the first move before it was too late. So, after conferring with his captains, the king ordered his entire army to uproot its stakes and slowly shift forward in an orderly manner, supposedly shouting to his troops, "Fellas, let's go!" After advancing into longbow range, the army once again hammered down its stakes, after which the English archers immediately began loosing heavy volleys at the surprised knights out in front. This withering arrow fire panicked the hastily formed French cavalry units, and now they charged full tilt at Henry's line. Erpingham had the longbowmen knock an arrow and draw their bowstrings back, and then commanded them to wait. Then, as the French mounted knights, drawn from the very best horsemen in the army, came close to the line through the soaking mud of the field, Erpingham shouted, "Now strike!" and his archers loosed at point-blank range from the front and tree line. The sky darkened for a second before
which made the sky darken with the amount of arrows. They could release up to 6 a minute. Actually, sorry, 6 in one shot. They could release up to 6 in one shot, like one between the index and thumb, then one between the middle and thumb, one between the ring and thumb, and one between the pinky and ring. I mean, why am I keep saying whatever? You just know that they could release 4 like that. I don't know where the other 2 came in, but yeah, they could release up to 6 at once and up to about 12 minutes if they did release all 6 at once. But yeah.
Hundreds of knights and their horses were struck and slain by the dense volley of bodkin-tipped arrows. Those who did manage to get through were trapped on the sharp stakes or routed back to their own lines. While the massacre of the mounted charge was going on, a group of peasants and cavalry, led by a few Burgundian nobles, looted Henry's baggage train, stealing the king's bedding, his crates of cash, and even one of his crowns. It didn't affect the course of the battle until later. D'Albret's first line of infantry was trudging with difficulty through often knee-deep mud at the same time, made worse by the preceding cavalry charge. A combination of the bad terrain, heavy armor, and having
Since they just knocked the entire unit into disarray when they smashed her into it, it's like they ran to their own unit.
Their cohesion disrupted by their own retreating cavalry, left the French vanguard sitting ducks for lethally accurate English longbowmen, who loosed volley after volley into the almost immobile mass and inflicted horrific losses. Despite the setbacks, the flower of France's military might smashed into the thin English line like a tidal wave, and immediately forced it back before the equally stubborn men-at-arms under Henry halted the push. While a vicious melee began at the point of contact, the second line of infantry now pushed forwards also, but they caused a crush upon nearing the vanguard, which prevented most of the army from engaging and most frontline troops from retreating. Though the French were suffering, Henry's melee infantry was taking a mauling. In the right division, Edward, Duke of York, was cut down in some of the fiercest fighting.
And then his son, Richard, took the throne.
While Henry V himself was almost killed and a portion of his crown cut off. When the archers on the flanks ran out of arrows, they charged in from the wings with whatever weapons they could find to assist their own warriors. Shortly after noon, the French attack collapsed, and the English took many prisoners of low and high rank, including the Dukes of Bourbon, Orléans, and Marshal Boucicaut. At that moment, someone in the English formation shouted that enemy reinforcements were incoming, perhaps having seen the looters at the camp earlier in the battle. With the amount of captives they had taken, it was plausible that a prisoner uprising, rearmed with discarded equipment, along with fresh foes, might doom Henry's army. The English king therefore ordered 200 archers to go to the camp and kill almost every single soldier the army had taken captive. With thousands dead on the field of Agincourt and even more prisoners slaughtered in the din of battle, the terrified remainder of the French forces retreated. That night, King Henry V of England made the captured Dukes of Orléans and Bourbon wait on his feasting table before reaching Calais and sailing home in mid-November. The English monarch had won perhaps the—
That was one of the most humiliating moments for the French. One was when Edward III captured John II, gave second Scotland, and yeah. And the other was when the French were absolutely defeated at the start of the Napoleonic Wars. And there, well, World War II.
The most famous clash of the 100 Years' War, but the war hadn't been won yet. Even though his greatest political triumphs were yet to come, Henry V was soon to be overshadowed by one of the most famous—
Joan of Arc, or Jean d'Arc in French, I think. Anyways, so I originally actually thought Henry VI was overshadowed by Joan of Arc, but almost all of Joan of Arc's time with the French, 2 years, were during Henry V. Actually, sorry, not 2 years, 3 years. She had 19, she was killed, 19. And she took, Mom, when she was 17, but yeah, she was killed just like before her 20th birthday, I think, so yeah. Anyways, I'm not sure about all of that. I am thinking if I'm sure or not, but yeah. She, after she mostly was under, was helping the French against Henry V, but a lot of the main things were retaking a lot of France happened under Henry VI also. So yeah, so I think that'll end for today. And yes, thanks for watching. See you next time. It's just been fun making these videos. I hope you also enjoy it. Smash like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. Bye.